Do you want to drive by the endgame of Path of Exile 2, one-shotting packs by holding down a single button? Want to run circles around bosses and make them look like a joke while they try to land a single hit on you? Want to clear your fourth ascendancy and put T15 maps on farm using a budget build measured in exalted orbs and not divines? Well, then this Rhoa mounted Lightning Arrow Deadeye Ranger build is the one for you. Quickly going over our core skills, let's talk about the star of the show, the Rhoa mount. This good boy cancels all of your movement penalties applied while firing off our skills, allowing you to kite with complete freedom of movement. This allows you to clear maps and content much quicker than the majority of other builds in the game, and avoid the majority of attacks from bosses by just running around in circles. Recommend playing with WASD movement to have an easier time taking advantage of this freedom of movement given to you by the Rhoa, as mouse movement can make kiting perfectly much more difficult. There are, of course, downsides to running the Rhoa mount. It costs 60 spirit to activate, meaning we need to have additional spirit on either our chest piece or amulet to pay for it alongside our other spirit gems. And most importantly, being knocked off the Rhoa will cause your character to become heavily stunned, unable to move for 3 full seconds with their evasion deactivated, likely resulting in death. The stun meter can be increased by increasing our maximum life and only through increasing our maximum life. Any source of stun threshold only pertains to reducing the chance of normal stuns and staggers experienced while on foot, and do not affect the Rhoa's stun meter. The meter will also not reduce over time. The only way to reduce it is to dismount the Rhoa and remount. So make sure to keep an eye on your stun meter anytime you take a particularly nasty hit to assess whether you need to quickly reset or not. Socket Meat Shield and Loyalty to reduce the damage your Rhoa receives while you're dismounted, and give yourself 10% damage resistance should you become dismounted. Lightning Arrow is the primary damage dealer for normal enemies, and we combo Barrage, Lightning Rod, and Lightning Arrow together to deal with rares and bosses. For Lightning Arrow, supports were still running Martial Tempo, Lightning Infusion, and Primal Armament. Your first Greater Jeweler Orb will be spent on charged shots for a sizable boost in damage every 3 casts. That's also going to be refunding its mana cost, helping us maintain our mana more easily. And for a fifth support, you would then socket Fork to boost your AoE capability even further. On Lightning Rod, we are still running Scattershot and Magnified Effect, but we've also added a new support gem, Deliberation, which gives us 30% more movement penalty when firing in exchange for 20% more damage. Thing is, we're on Aroa, so we don't have any movement penalty to multiply, so this is just 20% free damage. For a fourth gem, there are a lot of good options, but Blindside is a very rarely available 15% more critical hit chance and damage against blinded enemies. And thanks to our new passive tree, bosses and rares are going to be blinded, allowing us to take advantage of this support gem for some necessary crit ramp, as we are going to be scaling into a critical based build as the league progresses. Voltaic Mark now holds our concentrated effect as we no longer need to use it to clear packs of enemies, instead, only upkeeping our mark against bosses for more shock magnitude and shock chance. Persistence has stayed equipped to reduce how often we need to do this. Barrage has remained completely unchanged with Premediation, Ingenuity, and Arcane Tempo. As a quick refresher, we're using Barrage to quickly drop 3 stacks of rods on rares for burst damage, and using it on cooldown with Lightning Rod against bosses to increase our overall DPS compared to hard casting 3 sets of rods every time they expire. You do this every 8 lightning arrows, as that's how many times lightning rods can be detonated. Herald of Thunder does a lot of work for us, assisting Lightning Arrow in blasting screens of enemies. We've socketed Innervate for more lightning damage anytime it lands a killing blow on shocked enemies. Elemental Focus, as the Herald itself already cannot shock, so this is 25% free damage. And Long Shot for 35% more damage against distant targets, because the majority of Herald procs are going to be against enemies at the edge of your screen. And as our last spirit gem, we're running Wind Dancer, still to help us scale our evasion. Blind is still the only notable free support we can attach, and Clarity is still the choice if you have some extra spirit laying around. To finish up our skills section, while it is not at all necessary, if you do happen to get a perfect jeweler orb, you should spend it on Lightning Arrow to give it fork to make your AoE clear stupidly strong. The second one you get should be spent on Lightning Rod for Overextend, which will cause you to be dazed every time you critically hit with Lightning Rod. Hilariously, however, daze does not impact our heavy stun meter, and we cannot be normally stunned on the Rhoa. So the daze is meaningless, allowing us to pocket a 30% multiplicative increase to our critical damage. And for quality priority, go with Herald of Thunder, then Lightning Arrow, then Lightning Rod, then Barrage, and finally Voltaic Mark. Wind Dancer and Rhoa mount quality do not really matter. Next, going over the passive tree and what's changed since our starter guide, the build is now updated to level 86, as that's my level as the time of recording. We've removed the 5 points leading up to Exploit, and the 3 points for Harness the Elements, as they were both low value pickups. We've specced into the critical nodes on the right side of the tree, and no longer path through this side to Bestial Skin. Instead, we go around, saving a point in the process, and pick up Blind Chance on hit and a 50% increase to the effect of Blind. Blind causes our enemies to lose 20% of their accuracy and evasion for 4 seconds, so Pocket Sand brings this up to 30%. This is a substantial cut to the enemy's hit rate against us and works hand in hand with our evasion to prevent us from being hit while also scaling our critical chance and damage with Lightning Rod through the Blindside support gem for 3 passive points only. We then go up to First Approach, which gives us a massive increase to our damage and critical hit rate against enemies on full health. While this does very little for bosses, it does everything for our map clearing capability and is a big part of why we can just hold down Lightning Arrow while riding through T15s. Next, head up, grab Storm Surge for some lightning penetration, and then Kite Runner for some movement speed, and projectile damage. Then end off by grabbing the nearby jewel socket to finish the build. For your first ascendancy, get Gathering Winds. On the second, get Point Blank. For the third, Endless Munitions. And for the fourth, Wind Ward. For the attribute assignment, prioritize Intelligence and Strength if you need them to fill out requirements for your gems. And otherwise, spec all of your attributes into Dexterity. We're also not taking acrobatics, at least not until the ultra late game, because evasion is much harder to stack in vast quantities this league compared to the last. And acrobatics itself was heavily nerfed, making it far less desirable. Not to mention, we're on a Rhoa this league. The majority of area of effect attacks our evasion cannot help us against are easily avoided thanks to the Rhoa. So as long as you are wary of incoming area of effect attacks, especially during boss fights, you should be just fine without it. On your emeralds, you'll be using on your 3 jewel sockets, look for any combination of percent evasion and any relevant damage stat, such as increased damage with bows, increased lightning damage, or increased attack damage for the prefixes. For the suffixes, increased attack speed with bows, increased attack speed, increased critical damage bonus for attack damage, increased critical hit chance for attacks, or increased movement speed are all good rolls. But it's early in the league, so don't be picky and look for any 2 stats on this list while filling the other 2 lines with junk to save on currency. For a more detailed breakdown of the hows and whys of every choice made in the passive tree, either defer to my Mobalytics written guide linked in the description and pinned comment, or check out the starter version of the guide where I went over everything in great detail from level 1 to level 65. Onto the gearing section, not much has changed since the starter recommendations, other than us getting more picky and precise with our ideal pieces. Although you will want to still be flexible on the budget and prioritize only what's necessary this early in the league. This is going to mean a +1 arrow bow with 200 DPS at the beginning of maps, and a 300 DPS one when socketed with 2 greater iron runes by the time we're hitting T15 maps. Note that this bow should not have fire or cold damage included in the prefixes, physical damage and lightning damage only. For the +1 arrow, you can either look for dual string bows or search for a bow that spends a suffix slot on a bow attack's fire 1 additional arrow line, which is often going to be cheaper and overlooked compared to a natural dual string. The other ideal suffixes will be plus base critical hit chance and plus to critical damage bonus, but this is unrealistic and unnecessary for this stage of the game. Your quiver will ideally have +2 projectile skills with crit stats or attack speed in the suffixes, and prefixes made up of flat physical and lightning damage, and or projectile speed and damage with bow skills. A quiver with all of this is unrealistically expensive at this stage, so try to just prioritize strong prefix rolls and the +2 projectile skills for now, and don't worry too much about the other suffixes. Next, we need to make sure that we have 120 spirits so that we can use all of our gems. This means you'll need to spend a prefix on either your chest piece or amulet to achieve this. Currently, amulets with both +2 projectile levels and spirit are extremely expensive, so I recommend sacrificing a body armor line for now as a budgeting option. At this stage in the game, we need capped 75% elemental resistances, so you'll be utilizing any suffix lines necessary on your helmet, belt, amulet, rings, body armor, boots, and gloves in that order of priority to save the most currency on your gear and make it easier to get damage rolls on our gloves, movement speed on our boots, and high evasion on our chest by putting a lower level of priority on their contribution to our resistances. Chaos resistance is also a nice to have bonus, but it's going to be very expensive, especially this early to cap. So try to just have a line or two in your gear at most for now without worrying about hitting 75%. We also want to hit 80 to 85% evasion by the time we're at T15 maps, as you'll otherwise be catching too many projectiles from the enemies with your face. We achieve this by utilizing only dexterity armor bases, dropping our energy shield hybridization entirely from the starter guide, and want to pair up a flat evasion and percent evasion roll on our chest piece, especially, as all its evasion is doubled by bestial skin. Any rune sockets not utilized for elemental resistances out of necessity should be used for iron runes to stack on more evasion. And because we're going full evasion and our Rhoa's stun threshold is based on our maximum life, we need as much of it as possible. Try to hit 1500 maximum life by the time you reach T15 maps by stacking maximum life rolls in the prefixes of any piece of gear that can have it, which is all of them except for your bow and quiver. To quickly talk about the amulet anointment as well, a cheap damage based option will be critical exploit, while high alert will be our cheap survivability option. Use whichever is best for your setup based on your needs. And finally, we want our boots to have the highest movement speed prefix possible, 20% at the start of maps and 30 to 35% by the time we're at T15. Our Rhoa's movement speed is directly tied to ours. The faster we are, the easier it'll be to dodge incoming attacks, and the faster we'll clear our maps. If you are interested in a more detailed text based rundown on the build, I've updated my Mobalytics page linked in the pinned comment and description. I'll also be continually updating the page with any changes that I'm sure to make throughout the league. If you have any questions for me about the build, feel free to join our community Discord link below, or tune in for my regular streams on either YouTube or at twitch.tv/Aravan. Thank you to my coffee supporters who help keep the channel going, and thank you for watching till the end. I'll see you next time.